What up, say?
As soon as I got in, it said, "Hi, Scott, how are you?" Like, I opened the door with my Bluetooth. It said, "Hi, Scott, how's your day? But, please buckle up." And then it made a joke. Like, it's like, now let's start with the karaoke. And then I'm like, what? It goes, just joking, just relax. We all need to get over this jobs thing, right? There's going to be so many jobs for all these new technologies. The old ones are going to, might go in some area, but we've all done this. We all had to go to a play to be entertained, 100 years ago. And now there's a TV, and now there's an iPad, and now there's Netflix. And now, do you know what I mean? Like, eventually you realize that things just get better, and it's okay that we don't have a driver in the car.
And what it reminds me of is just that no matter how much competition there is, if you produce something that is just a step change in how good it is, and that resonates, it will spread like wildfire. So it just goes back to having the best product will always win. And that's why we see these companies competing so hard against each other, because they want to be the best. They know that is going, if you are the best model, if you create the best images, the best videos, if you can do the best coding, you will capture literally the globe.
My vision of San Fran from that trip 2 years ago wasn't a great one. I loved Silicon Valley. I loved Palo Alto. That seemed great, but San Fran just seemed a bit not at its best. And I think that was wildly, being spread. But it was actually going to your kind invitation to your investors. What are their names again? Dave and Dave from, where are they from?
From Preston-Werner Ventures. Yeah, so this is the founder of GitHub, Tom.
Yep.
Preston-Werner. For those not in tech, GitHub is a very popular software that got sold to Microsoft for billions. But Tom, who founded that company and sold out, he started a VC fund, and he's been investing in a lot of AI startups. So we're lucky enough to get investment from Tom, and I would have loved to be at this event with all of the other portfolio companies, but I thought you were over there, so why not have Scotty go and represent BuildPass and have some vinos with the rest of the crew.
Welcome to Built to Scale, hosted by myself, Scott Wilcox from WBuild, where we craft some of the world's finest homes. And Matt Parrott from BuildPass, he's on a mission to build the world's smartest operating system for construction sites. We're two Aussie founders with global ambitions in business, technology, AI, and robotics. Every week, we're going to distill a broad set of intelligent insights into founder-driven takes that elevate your edge. Listen in to get our Aussie lens on the global playing field for anyone keen to stay ahead. Or in short, for those who refuse to be left behind.
Well, welcome everyone. Welcome, Maddie. Great to see you. We've had a week off while I travelled around the world. How have you been?
I've been very well. Not much happening in Melbourne compared to over in the US. Certainly some big news from over there. So I'm keen to hear how was the trip?
Mate, it was amazing. So started off in LA, sort of got off the plane, which I'll talk about later. Got in a Cybertruck, the Cyber Beast version as well, which was interesting. This thing's 3 ton. They're obviously not legal in Australia. So I'm driving around, in this black big Cybertruck, and I was actually on my way to Pacific Palisades to go check to see what was going with the fires and how we can help. And I think we've spoken about our interest in helping out over there. And going through Beverly Hills, like doing a lot of people watching, and then there's people filming me in the car on the way through, because obviously the Cybertruck still got, like this big black beast sort of going through Beverly Hills. And I think because it's so left of center, it's sort of like, you can't believe someone's actually willing to drive one of those things through here at the moment.
So what's the beast version? How's it different to the normal Cybertruck?
So it's sort of like the Model S Plaid, where they've just turned it up to like 11, and the thing goes from 0 to 100 kilometers in 2.6 seconds, and it's 3 ton. So it's literally a spaceship just on the ground. That was kind of wild, but it wasn't the reason I was there. But I just thought I'd take the opportunity to do something that Australia won't let us do.
Also a pretty risky move to be driving a Tesla like that with all of the issues that are going on.
Mate, literally, I took out the extra insurance. It was called no fault insurance, where basically if you get vandaled because you're driving an Elon mobile, that you don't, I had full waiver.
You could have just driven it off a cliff.
Exactly.
That's,
So,
That's exciting. But yeah, but I would love to, I'm sure the audience would love to learn about some of the insights from the trip. Before we get into all of the AI news and the robot rundown that we usually talk about, let us know, why were you over there? You know, your background, obviously you're in construction, you're working on tech at the moment. Why were you over in the US, and what insights can you bring home?
look, the reason I went is because I was sitting there during the Australian summer, and I'd actually just watched a documentary because it's our particular fire season, and it was a pretty dry summer in Melbourne. I watched actually some like Black Saturday documentary about the devastation we had in Victoria, and then a few years ago up the New South Wales and Queensland coast, we had some really bad fires as well. And then suddenly, like early January, when we're on our usual break, these fires break out in LA, and I was just glued to it because I saw the destruction it was causing. And it really, so for the whole week of last week of my holiday here, I was basically just watching that 24/7. And as it was happening, I realized the scale of the problem. Well, I thought I did. And then sort of just kept following it over the last couple of months, wanted to head over to see how we could help, because obviously we build homes, and this is probably the biggest, especially like luxury home crisis, but also just the general population. Their homes have been devastated as well in Altadena, and just figure out what they're planning on doing to fix it, because it doesn't make much sense to me. There's 10,000 homes that have been burnt. Everyone, I assume, wants to be back in their house in the next 3 to 5 years. And the average cost per square foot, they call it, is about $1,000 US a square foot. Now, the average home size, if you stay with me for the maths, is sort of 3,000 to 5,000 square feet, which is 300 to 500 square meters in Australia, which are medium to large size houses, which means there's about $40 billion of construction to happen in homes over the next 3 to 5 years there, which is something like $1 billion a month. Now, in construction, and I know that the math is going to be boring everyone, but the point is that it's about 50,000 workers that's needed on top of the existing demand, and they have a demand issue. So I went over there, and we've been looking into it a lot at W for a long time, just around how we can use robotics and AI and less people to build homes. And at the end of the day, it's the only way to solve the housing affordability crisis in general. So I went over there to see, are they having these discussions? I went to a town hall where all the governors and all the local support teams were selling hope to the communities, but I still didn't necessarily see the answers, because it's not going to be solved. Because even if you import 50,000 workers, which they're unavailable, skilled workers, they need 50,000 homes. So it's the same as the problem in Australia, except this is, to me, ground zero for the problem with housing availability. And these people have been displaced. And I just really wanted to go see it for myself. So I went over there. I went to Altadena first. I went to the town halls, I said, and then cruised through those communities, and we'll show some photos. It's absolutely devastating. It looks, you would not guess that you're in America, let alone LA. It looks terrifying. And I think we've never seen anything in Australia on the scale of the amount of homes lost. We lose vegetation and wildlife. But for them, there were these people still rummaging through their homes. In fairness to the government, they have really put together a brute force of the Army Corps to demolish these homes. But the first 2 or 3 months was just getting rid of like things like asbestos. So you haven't even been allowed back into your yard yet. And an amazing story there. We'll pop it up in the show notes. I was interviewing this guy who was 75. His name was Fernando. He'd been there for 30 years. And there was a bunch of people rummaging through his yard, and he's in like a hazmat suit. And I wasn't, which made me worry. Why not? Why I wasn't. But he was telling me about this watch from his grandfather that was 100 years old that he had passed on to his grandson that was lost. And he's like, look, you take my home and everything else, but we've now lost this watch. And he was really upset about it, telling me that he was going to rebuild. I was asking about the insurance and how it's going to work. And most people are underinsured, so they can't afford the cost to reconstruct. So there's a bunch of issues there. But what was amazing is, as he was telling me, this team of like volunteers brought out this 100-year-old watch. It was sort of like
amazing.
when that lady in the Titanic lost her, her necklace or whatever, and they found it at the bottom of the ocean. Like, it was just amazing. And he was so happy. And this is some Christian foundation that was just helping, say, especially older people rummage through their own homes.
Incredible.
And just really hit home that there is the professional side of me hitting over there to, because it's the greatest demand. It's a once in a, generation or even longer, once in a multi-generation demand for what we do and the way we think about construction, because I don't think it's going to be solved with conventional construction techniques. But two, just the people problem over there. So
basically,
that was,
it puts a spotlight on this labor issue that we're seeing globally, and both Australia and the US have this same problem. There's not enough skilled labor to build the homes and the infrastructure that we want. And I guess it's really just putting a microscope on that and blowing it right up and saying, okay, this issue that we already have, it's now 20 times worse. How are we going to react? And typically the US is quite good at innovating. And so hopefully a shining, a sliver of light out of this is the fact that we can really focus on innovation in construction. And I guess that is a lot of the reason why you're over there.
Yeah, I mean, and California is the innovation capital of the world, right? Now, but what they are to then stifle that is they're like the red tape capital of the world. But what this disaster appears to be doing is it appears to be combining that sort of innovation with the political will to remove the red tape and help people quickly get permits for their house and avoid all the other nonsense they have to go through. So I think this is almost the perfect situation for California to take all the great things about it, the innovation side, and remove some of the more harsh and things that thwart innovation, like we have here in Australia, because these people just need to rebuild. They don't need a 2-year permitting process. They need to get back into their homes. They need to get their kids back into the local schools. The schools need to get rebuilt. So for me, it's ground zero of all the things that I try and tackle. I think what's really interesting is the AI, that AI has such a huge role to play, I think, in that paperwork side, that administrative function, that fast tracking planning. There should just be models saying, yep, tick, this has ticked every box, go get going, go get constructing. And then robotics needs to be the answer. 3D printing, those robotic bricklayers that we've been talking about, even some new technologies potentially around. We're looking at carbon fiber reinforced concrete, which is a bit lighter, a bit better for the environment. You can also deliver some, greater, architectural concepts and features and things like that. So, we went over there. I had a good look at that. That was pretty daunting and inspiring at the same time. And then the main reason I went, which we spoke about last week, was the trip to San Francisco for the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, where I also had to present. I think you and I were sort of joking about putting that presentation together and what I could say, but it got even worse. When I went to LA, I had to redo the whole thing, basically on the run, because the problem, I was sort of still talking about this problem like it was some almost glamorous, futuristic thing, when really the demand for it is now. And the demand for it is far in excess of what I thought. So I had to sort of re-put that together and pitch to a bunch of business people, very tech-savvy people, investors, and basically shine a light on the issue to them and say, we think we've got some ideas on how to fix it, but we need some support. So that went really well.
And how are your presentation skills?
Terrible. I tell you what, if I could have just done it with you, like on a podcast, and just sold something, that would have been easier. But a room, public speaking, especially with an issue that you're not quite on top of yourself, it would have been really easy for me to speak about W and building homes in Australia and how to do that and why we're different. To talk about a problem you're still rationalizing in your head and your future thoughts and how you think something should be fixed. That's
100%.
Obviously also a sensitive topic, very hard.
It makes it so much harder trying to talk about something that's new, that you're not as sure about. I remember I did a public speech in front of 700 builders on a topic that another person had written. I actually got someone to do the speech for me, and I don't think I'll ever do it again because I was trying to learn this thing. If you haven't created the content yourself, it's like you're trying to memorize it. And I mean, props to actors who do this all the time. I don't know how they do it. But mate, well done in getting through it. And what was the reaction like to Elysium and the concept?
Mate, really good. A lot of questions. How are you using robotics? How are you doing this? People want some certainty. I think when you're a tech agnostic business, but obviously technology first, but agnostic, where you basically say, look, I've been building homes for 15 years, and we've just been plugging in the best tool throughout the workflow for that whole time. Like, I'm not here to ask you for $100 million and create a model that's going to compete with ChatGPT and DeepSeek. We're just going to plug in those models, throughout the workflow. I'm not going to compete with billions of dollars going to Chinese robotics. We're going to plug in the best robotics into that part of the workflow. And I think that's what people found interesting the most, because they're waiting for me to tell them that we're all in on 3D printing and we've bought one. But that's not really scalable to me. That's not really solution. It's I don't think this needs a huge investment. It just needs action. And the premise is to not introduce a human at any point until we have to. It's like the last resort is a human. And if you think about any business that way, I think it's a completely different viewpoint. In my current business in W, most things need a human for now. So we hire as soon as we have a need. We hire. And the good thing about Elysium that I've been working on for a couple of years now is that there has been no hiring, and the idea is the last resort is the human. So there's a lot of advisory and investment and things like that. The board's all humans for now, but in terms of the functions of the business is human last.
Yeah, and we can talk about AI boards in a second, but I want to double click on what you just mentioned on plugging in the best tools and looking at the best models, the best robots. There's so much innovation happening, and there's literally billions, close to trillions of dollars being invested in this space. What it reminds me of is when AI startups started getting funded by VCs. One of the questions that often came up was, well, are you actually owning the data? Are you building the model? Are you the foundation, or are you just an AI wrapper? And they use that terminology, almost disparaging it. But what we're seeing now is there's so many tools coming out at the application layer that are using these models under the hood, and they're finding great use cases, and those use cases are making people way more efficient. Not everyone wants to go and build their own software or do everything within ChatGPT. If you can wrap it and you can deliver a solution to someone that solves their needs out of the box, people are going to pay for that. And I think that's what that has been unlocked by this AI wave. And so what you're talking about here with technology in the construction process, it really resonates with myself. And then I think what we're seeing in the VC landscape of don't try and compete at the foundation model level. Leave that to the people who are raising billions of dollars. See how you can most quickly integrate the best tools into your product or service or whatever it is and deliver value to the customer. Like, it's really simple. So I think that concept resonates really strongly.
Well, just remember, ChatGPT is just an NVIDIA wrapper. So, so don't feel bad. I think the term wrapper has been talked down, but all businesses are, and they're all just tools, right? We use physical tools in construction. And I was talking to people about, when the shovel turned into the excavator, this is the same thing. The excavator now can be remotely controlled, and then eventually that excavator is going to be autonomous, and that's a robot. So, some people were still a bit shocked. There was a few people in construction there as well that were arguing with me that I'm completely wrong. So we'll let them have that opinion, but that's okay. We're not all on the same boat. But the other thing about the trip to San Fran, man, which was really cool. San Fran seems back to me. We'd spoke in the last episode about it. This whole business, Elysium, was built out of my run across the Golden Gate Bridge after 2 weeks at Stanford. And, we realized that the cost for the fall prevention netting had cost just as much as building the whole bridge and taken longer. And my vision of San Fran from that trip 2 years ago wasn't a great one. I loved Silicon Valley. I loved Palo Alto. That seemed great, but San Fran just seemed a bit, not at its best. And I think that was wildly, being spread. But it was actually going to your kind invitation to your investors. What are their names again? Dave and Dave from, where are they from?
From Preston-Werner Ventures. Yeah. So this is the founder of GitHub, Tom Preston-Werner. To those not in tech, GitHub is a very popular software that got sold to Microsoft for billions. And it essentially allows you to manage all of the source code. So all of the software developers in the world basically use GitHub. But Tom, who founded that company and sold out, he started a VC fund and he's been investing in a lot of AI startups. So we're lucky enough to get investment from Tom. And yeah, I would have loved to be at this event with all of the other portfolio companies. But I thought you were over there. So why not have Scotty go and represent BuildPass and have some vinos with the rest of the crew?
Well, it's funny because I was definitely the only physical builder there. But what it was Tom has this beautiful space in San Francisco. It's an old church he's converted into basically an entertainment venue where he gets obviously everyone from the portfolio together. It's next door to Gary Tan from Y Combinator as well. So it was actually a joke. He's telling everyone, as you walk out the door, feel free to knock on his door and ask him for some more money or something. But what was amazing was obviously the talent within this portfolio, of which you guys are a part of it. And everyone knew who BuildPass was, by the way. But the talent and it was really cool for me because I'm not exposed to this, was just these bunch of geniuses who obviously drink way less vino than me. So, because they're too busy, making amazing products all day. But but they're all like just doing amazing things and just little niches, where they're just solving this one problem that I didn't even know was a problem until they told me. But from all over the world, from Cambridge, Oxford, Stanford, Harvard, locally there, UCLA sort of backgrounds. But this all getting together and sort of, geeking out feels like the wrong word, but I'd come from a YPO conference, which is full of people and businesses who are of a certain scale. You have to have, 50 plus staff and turn over a certain amount of revenue. Completely different vibe to these just hard at it startups, lean and mean, learnt a lot. But it just felt like just even that and the streets of San Fran, that place is humming at the moment. And I think young people are going there to start little businesses. All the incubators are there, all the accelerators. So, in general, just thought great for that city.
Yeah, it does feel like it's back. Last year I went in February and then I went again in October. And just in that time, so much had changed. The price of a beer had gone up by about 50% was one thing. But it does feel like it's back. And I think it's a combination of the AI wave has certainly sent more builders back. It's brought the life back into San Francisco. Like there's this opportunity, this once in a lifetime opportunity to put your head down and build. So I think it's that. And then also, there's the changing political landscape. They've got a new governor or mayor. I can't remember what they even call it over there. It was coming in and just trying to clean it up as well. Like, as you know, if you walk down the wrong street in San Francisco, it's pretty confronting. All of the drug addicts on the street. It's super confronting, but I think once that all gets cleaned up, it feels like the energy is back in the city. And you mentioned that on the way to the event, you got in a Waymo, one of the driverless cars. I've been in one, but I want to get your first reaction. What was it like? It
was amazing. And I just thought, and one of the things I've taken back to my team is it was so much better than Uber. As soon as I got in, it said, "Hi Scott, how are you?" Like, I opened the door with my Bluetooth. It said, "Hi Scott, how's your day? But please buckle up." And it made a joke. Like, it's like, now let's start with the karaoke. And then I'm like, what? It goes, just joking, just relax. But it was nice car, super clean, great driving. Made me think like Waymo's so much better than Uber. Uber was better than a cab. A cab was better than the bus. And it's autonomous. It's a robot. And it made me come back to my team and be like, let's be the Waymo. Don't be scared. Like, go out there. It's got some weird LiDAR cameras and things all over it. And people are going to laugh, probably laughed at it for the first 6 months over there. But it's the future. This is the future.
Heading to Mr. Juice. Please make sure your seatbelt is fastened. For any questions, press the call support button to speak with a rider support agent.
And I'm sure
Yep.
Tesla, are going to introduce theirs. They'll do a deal either themselves or with Uber or something, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But cars will be driverless. And if a car, which is going 100 mile an hour or 100 kilometers an hour in one direction and another one's going the other way, and we can trust it, if we can trust that robot, we can trust any robot. Do you know what I mean? Like that's got your life in its hands. And it felt better than worrying about if a driver is tired or has had a bad day, or is being distracted with their phone.
Totally agree. When I went in it for the first time, first of all, it was surreal. It was like almost an emotional moment. I was like, this is the future, and it was just so different. It felt like I was on a different planet. But then all of exactly what you just said started seeping in. I was like, this is better than having a human driver. I know what I'm going to get. The ride was smoother. You don't have to worry about this driver who is trying to make more money by getting to the stop faster or is thinking about issues in their personal life. It's just a pre-programmed robot. And the thing that I found really interesting though was you could tell that it had been trained on human drivers because it did certain things that I felt if you were just programming a car how to drive, it probably wouldn't do, but it's followed humans. So I don't know if you noticed this, but one example was as it went into the right lane to turn right, so in Australia, that'd be like the left, you'd think that it would just go and turn the corner, but it actually went a little bit round to the left and then turned right. And I was like, that's like a natural human tendency for people to do, to take it, but you wouldn't program that in. So even things like, I thought that if a car in the lane next to you started moving towards you a bit, it might just slam on the brakes and go, you know what, that's too dangerous, slam the brakes, avoid. But what it did, it obviously checked there was no one in the lane to the left of me and just moved over a little bit to create a bit more space. I was like, it's what a human would do. And they've obviously just trained these AI models looking at human drivers and making them better. And I found that really fascinating that it's not programmed in, it's just learning. It's learning based on the best scenarios. And now it's probably going to keep learning based on all of its own rides that it's doing.
Yeah, and for me, it just closed off the loop of we all need to get over this jobs thing, right? There's going to be so many jobs for all these new technologies. The old ones are going to might go in some area, but we've all done this. We all had to go to a play to be entertained, 100 years ago, and now there's a TV, and now there's an iPad, and now there's Netflix, and now, do you know what I mean? Like eventually you realize that things just get better. And it's okay that we don't have a driver in the car. It's a nicer experience. That driver can go maybe get a job that's more fulfilling or creative, or they can, because the cost of these things will come down and down and down. The cost of that trip once the technology gets better. So you'll be able to get from A to B for so cheap and during that you'll be able to work on whatever device and start planning your own business. So don't worry if the job of driving that car from A to B has gone.
Totally.
Because to make that car, to make that technology, to do all those things is the new market of work. So that was amazing. Another experience over there, which is really cool, is we got a private tour of the Golden State Warriors arena. And behind the scenes there, and that was amazing. We got to go into the locker rooms. We had a really nice dinner at the top there. Their chief revenue officer had a chat with us. One thing that really stuck out for me there and the whole trip amongst the YPOers as well and some of the great people we met was, AI is doing this. What AI is doing is it's basically making unicorns, you basically can empower unicorns to be superhuman. And when I say unicorns, I mean like workers that are completely agentic themselves and autonomous. If you can give them the tools and they can leverage the tools, they become like businesses. They're like businesses within your business. And you've got to create an environment and a vision to inspire them and keep them. But the old business ethos of people with thousands of employees, within those thousands of employees, there's going to be a bunch of B and C graders who are just there along for the ride. And traditionally you would have needed them to fill out some forms or do some basic tasks and make a couple of calls. But I think the direction everything's going in is really just grabbing absolute superstars, like hiring. So I'm really good at hiring fast and firing slowly, which is the opposite advice that everyone else gives. So that's my worst trait. Like I'm such a people person that I could interview someone who's clearly maybe just slept rough overnight and like convince myself that I could turn them into, the next greatest PM. So I think what this trip made me realize is you've got something really special that you're building. If you're going to bring someone new into that, they need to be really special themselves, because you're about to give them all these resources and all these tools and expect to leverage that to help you at your velocity and to create something special. And another way that hit home was just at the Golden State Warriors, where they'd not made the finals, which is – you have a 40%, you have a 60% chance of making the playoffs every year in the US basketball, because more than half the teams make the playoffs historically. And they hadn't made it for like 17 years in a row, or 15 out of 17 years. And the guy that was speaking to us, the chief revenue officer, he'd been there for 25. So he said we were statistically almost impossibly bad. It was very hard to be as bad as us. They had new owner purchase around 2010. He grabbed Jerry West, who's famous, worked with the Chicago Bulls through their time, but just a great basketball mind. They hired Steve Kerr. They drafted a guy named Steph Curry. But basically there was just these pillars of excellence put in place. And you imagine the size of that organization, the worst team ever. They go on to win 4 of the next 6 championships. And he just said that everyone who comes in here before they come in here understand our values, our mission, and the bar that we're setting. And it was like, you could just feel it in the venue, this CEO to cleaner, like the joint was spotless, absolutely spotless. The players' rooms, everything. And it just reinforced what I'd sort of learned from that, I suppose, that AI, that, this thinking about AI and unicorns and A players and all that kind of stuff, that it's cultural. Do you know what I mean? It starts at the top. One owner bought it. This struggling franchise, he moved them from just across the water in the Bay Area to San Fran, and hired a few good people and created the best basketball dynasty, almost ever, maybe the second best ever. So yeah, that was amazing.
It's an incredible story. And to your point around jobs and AI, and that there will be more jobs for people, I agree. But like you say, if you're a B or a C player and you want to go to work and kind of just, turn the cogs over and think about, dinner that night, it is going to get harder, because it's going to get easier for the people who want to be really good to use AI, and the bar across the board is going to get lifted. And I love that the comment around the top-down leadership as well, because it does feel like, especially running a scaling business, that when you try to drive a culture of excellence, it can feel like it needs to be really repetitive. And you do need to have your mission and your values, and you need to drill it in every single day. Like, this is why we exist. We only hire people who are going to live by these values. We don't want to get anyone in who's going to stray from those values, because that can bring down the bar. One person, one bad hire can bring down, it can be really toxic and just bring that bar down. And it isn't a little thing. So it's like, I love what you're saying around from the CEO to the cleaner, and it's clean everywhere, everything's spotless. I sometimes feel like a broken record, or like I'm crazy when I'm saying to the team, we come to the office after we leave a meeting, push your chair in, like just the little things. Put your stuff away. Don't leave crap all over the desk. Like, if we're trying to say that we build the world's greatest software and our bar is here, everything we do has to be high quality. And so from an organizational perspective, to have that through such a large org is incredible to hear. And I mean, it provides a little bit of hope for us small companies that we can do it.
Well, also, I think you've obviously got that skill that it seems like all the great CEOs and founders are perfectionists, and they worry about little details all day. So you worrying about the chairs getting pushed in is definitely a good sign for you, because I think Steve Jobs would have said the same thing.
That and keeping the coffee machine clean as well.
I've heard about your coffee machine.
The 2 hills that I'll die on, we don't have to get into that. Mate, you also said that you saw the launch of a podcast over in San Francisco.
Well, so it's the First Time Founders podcast, which is also, they're really famous. They've the guy named Ed who runs it. He's also part of Prof G Markets. But luckily, right in front of us, the CEO of Reddit, Steve Huffman, was there, and yeah, it was really insightful, really cool to have a podcast filmed in front of you, especially as young podcasters ourselves. Steve Huffman, what a story! Started Reddit. Sold really early. I think he worked with Paul Graham and Y Combinator. He actually went in with a different idea around food delivery, funnily enough, or something similar. Bit early, bit ahead of his time. And Paul Graham said, "Don't like the idea, like you as a person. Let's go again, start rethinking." And then they thought about having these communities on the internet. And that's what it is. Reddit's an opportunity for everyone to go to the corner of the internet that they're super interested in and explore that and have their ideas voted up and down. And the word democratize just gets overused, especially in Silicon Valley, but all around the world. But he really wanted to democratize that sort of social engagement and community online. Sold out really early for I think a big number, and then the place just started to deteriorate and had that sort of Steve Jobs comeback. Had some really interesting things to say around moderation, and I think that podcast will be live either now or soon anyway, so everyone can check it out. But the one thing I took from it as well was just what you were saying there and those core values. And for him, he said, if you're not running the big decisions and the big, like this way or that way, 50-50s in your operation through your core values as a filter, then they're not core values. Do you know what I mean? Or they're not mission statements. They're just something you've put on the wall, because if you're not referencing them, and we'll get into a bit more AI stuff going down as we get further. But one thing I did straight away was I put all our core values into a custom GPT. And then I'm just going to share that with my team, and just, if you've got a question, run it by our core value GPT, and just hopefully it'll help you spit out the right answer.
Amazing.
And you just realize that you've got these tools now where no one's got an excuse to say, I didn't realize that, I didn't realize that was part of the, the mission or the core value and stuff. And you just go, well, it's a GPT on your dashboard, so click on it, type in your question.
Too easy. Mate, that's well, I think that's a great recap of the trip. We usually just jump straight into news and things, but I think that was worthwhile doing because there's so many fascinating insights. And I can't wait to get over there myself in a couple of weeks. But mate, speaking of news, the big thing recently, tariffs, big Trump, he's absolutely shaking the markets, I think deliberately. But what's your thoughts? How does it affect, I guess, your business? How does it affect Australia? Obviously, the Aussie dollar has been absolutely crunched at the moment. So we're personally going through the process of converting a bit of USD to Oz to take advantage. But yeah, look, how does it affect us over here in Oz?
Well, look, I've got a bit of tariff fatigue because all my favorite podcasts have gone all in on tariffs. And I love that whatever Trump does for the week, everyone becomes like a master in straight away. So I won't pretend to be the tariff guru, especially you and I on our AI podcast. But I think one of the things, Australian dollar tank, 60 cents, no good. Very motivated to earn some US dollars now instead of just, because I do some paying. I earn AUD and pay out at USD to like some of our, fractional, CMO hires and things like that. And just because there's so much talent in the US that I like to use in my contact list. So time to earn some USDs, I think is the number one lesson for me. Look, my thing on it, I think China is so far ahead in manufacturing and now that manufacturing is becoming autonomous and doesn't need human labor, my gut feeling is when Trump talks about bringing manufacturing back to the US, it's not about jobs. I mean, to his base, he's going to say for jobs. No one wants to make Nikes in the US in a factory, with their hands, and no one wants to, physically probably even make chips either. People want to wear Nikes, not make them. But what I think it is, what he's doing is saying we need to wrestle back some manufacturing, because at the moment, China are basically printing out drones and robotics and all that kind of, and then it's going to turn into their defense weaponry as well. And I think it's really, this whole situation is really just about trying to bring some manufacturing prowess back to the US, and they're going to do that with autonomous robots building. So that's my guess. I could be completely wrong. That's okay. We're allowed to be wrong on this show. But for me personally, also with the business, we're signing some decent sized contracts at the moment that are lump sum, and all builders have fixed price contract trauma from the COVID days and price rises. And once again, like it was through there, I think it's about sharing risk and being open and honest with your clientele. If you've got some existing fixed price stuff, and probably just sharing the burden. We speak a lot about that. We spoke about sharing the value with AI and being more efficient in your business. So you share that with your customer. You don't take it all or give it all. And I think with the tariff situation, you probably just want some carve outs in some contracts if they are fixed price to share the ups and downs of if the market's going to be volatile.
Mate, sounds good. I like the mentality of not being tariff experts. I fall into the same bucket, so we can probably leave it there and move on to the AI news.
Yeah, let's switch gears. What have you heard while I've been busy driving around doing all my sort of craziness? What's happened in the AI world, which is actually what we're meant to talk about?
Yes. So let's recap on OpenAI. So we talked about last time in our show, a couple of weeks ago now, they just made some improvements to 4O's image generation capabilities. We didn't know at the time the absolute storm that it was going to create. They literally announced it 2 hours before we recorded the last pod. And in the 2 weeks since then, Sam Altman said it himself, the servers have been melting. People have been going wild with creating images, because what we saw was basically a step change in its ability to create images. It went from something that was a bit gimmicky to, oh my God, you can literally replace whole advertising teams because you can just do it all with a prompt. So the image generation capabilities have just taken on a whole new step. I think that one of the very funny things to see was this these Ghibli style images.
Yes,
Because everyone's gone crazy on that. And again, like, credit to Sam. I can't remember the exact post, but it was something along the lines of, you spend 10 years of your life trying to solve AGI and benefiting the whole
I think
universe.
you said cure cancer.
cure cancer and stuff, and then all you get recognized for is to make silly memes off your images in these Ghibli style images. So
I think he also said, and everyone hates you for that whole time.
And everyone hates you. Yeah. So what a life. You also had no equity in your company for a while there. But yeah, so that, I think that's just crazy to see. And what it reminds me of is just that no matter how much competition there is, if you produce something that is just a step change in how good it is, and that resonates, it will spread like wildfire. So it just goes back to having the best product will always win. And that's why we see these companies competing so hard against each other, because they want to be the best. They know that is going, if you are the best model, if you create the best images, the best videos, if you can do the best coding, you will capture literally the globe. So look, I found that was really fascinating. Obviously, we also had in that time, Elon's made some moves. So in his game of 4D chess, X.AI, which is funnily enough, was valued more than X itself. So X being Twitter. And so, for those who aren't aware, Elon bought Twitter, I think it was for around $40 billion at the time.
44.
Value tanked. They say it's worth sort of 33-ish now. And so X.AI, worth about $80 billion, has decided to purchase X. And look, I think it's a really smart move. He is fully owning the data. He's going to use the data to train X.AI, and that could be their moat. Like you mentioned before with Reddit is doing their own models and training their own data on that. But if X locks out all of the other models from the most up-to-date information, and really it's the best representation of human consciousness. It's just like a stream of people's thoughts at any time. If you can train a model that has real-time data with access to that, that is, you would assume, going to be better in a lot of scenarios than the other model's going to be. So again, a standby, never bet against Elon. So to all those lefties standing out on the corners, spraying Teslas and things, I think you guys are idiots. But they're big moves from him, as we'd expect.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that was sort of always going to be the case. I think he avoided a margin call on his Tesla stock as well. So I think some extra motivation to get that deal done. I think also with OpenAI following that amazing uptick of users as well, they just closed another round, which I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it was closing the biggest valuation private round in history. It was either 300 or 400 billion. At a company that's not profitable, I don't think. So unbelievable. I sort of agree. I have this OpenAI wrestle every month when the bill comes through, because you convinced me to go with the $200 model. And I have this sort of monthly, do I just cancel it? And, because there's all these free tools, and they consistently, I think they're just great at dropping. It's almost like they drop in response, like a return, like an Andre Agassi return of serve to some other bit of tech that's just come out. Like Manus comes out and they go bang, and then they just respond something the next day, and just sort of, it's like they're teasing us with, we're much better than you, but we just try and keep it for behind closed doors for as long as we can. And they're obviously, protecting their servers. And these smaller companies that seem to catch them quickly, apart from Gemini and probably X, don't have the compute to deal with the 50 million users that log on. When you hear about a product and it goes viral, then the product sucks because they don't have the compute. So that seems like where these big players. I remember when I was in the States and I was trying to just get my takeaways from all these different functions I was going to, and I just started having. I was at one stage I was arguing with Grok, Gemini, and OpenAI in the car, because I was switching between the apps, because they were all they had different. It's interesting when different servers are overloaded with certain requests. So OpenAI then had all that photo generation, image generation, destroying their compute. They became useless on voice. So I just switched to Gemini and then dropped my notes in. So I think for people like you and me, like we said, it's just so awesome to just have all this money going into all these tools that we just get to, draw cats with or run businesses on.
Yeah, and mate, on the canceling, thinking about canceling subscriptions, we're in the same mindset. I think behind labor, our subscription cost is the biggest in our business, and we're really starting to say, what can we kill, because this is too much. But funnily enough, exactly what you said, we're about to cancel one of our subscriptions, and then they just dropped something, and we're like, oh. So I've talked about Devon before, our AI software programming assistant. We were using it for small things, but it's $500 a month. We're like, maybe we're just not using it enough yet. So we actually cancel it, and we still have access to it. Anyway, they literally today, they sent it an update to us. This AI software programmer now is now fully integrated with our log of feedback. So we use this tool called Linear to manage all of our work. It's a project management tool, basically, that tech teams love. And so we use that. Now Devon is fully integrated with Linear. It can go through all of the feedback coming in, all of the bugs, and it can just start working on them in the background fully autonomously. So they don't actually go into production. But like before, it was like, okay, we need to choose, let's get Devon to work on this thing, see what it can do, let's review it. And you might have, one of our software programmers managing a few Devon agents. Now we could have 200 Devon agents working autonomously, just fixing things. So look, there is a world whereby no software should have bugs in it, or all of the requests are coming in are just being done in the background. And then we almost get to pick and choose what we put into the product. It's like, we don't have to choose what feature we're going to build and then build it. It gets built, and then we choose what goes in. And so again, we're probably going to sign back up to Devon and say, we didn't mean to cancel. We'll keep you for another few months. But it's like you said with OpenAI and just these constant releases, we are living in such a good time because there's so much money going in. These products are moving so fast and changing the landscape so fast. And if our subscription bill is a little bit higher for the time being, just to have access in this weird, funny time that we're in, well, maybe so be it.
So if you were to dive deeper on that for someone who knows nothing about software, is this the equivalent of your sort of cars running and a light pops on and then the car starts fixing itself? Like, what is this if someone who knows nothing about software, what you just said?
Yeah, basically. So with software, especially software that's changing and you're releasing new things, you have what we call regressions. So you're adding a new feature in one part of the software and you accidentally break something else. So your users, they're using something and, a page just doesn't work anymore. Or, you used to be able to click this button that did something, but now it does something else. And you've used software products before, you probably have certain frustrations with them. Why is this button here? Why doesn't it do this anymore? And so these little bugs pop up, and if they're popping up a lot, it can be hard to work through them all and you have to prioritize. And so exactly like you said, it would be the same as you're driving a car. Instead of going and taking it to the mechanic has to fix it, has to diagnose the problem, fix it, then you get your car back. It is like having the mechanic inside of your car, just ready to fix it. So I think that's a really good analogy. Yeah.
Wow. That is amazing. And I saw the other big one for the week was Llama. I haven't had much chance to have a look at it because they always seem to drop these things, the night before you and I get together. Have you seen anything? Have you had a play with it, or do you guys get to leverage a tool like that, or what's special about what Meta have done there?
Yeah, so I don't know heaps about the Llama drop either, but what I do know is they've announced 3 new models. A lot of them are either open source or semi-open source, where they share the weightings of the model, but not the full source code. The biggest news out of it is one of the models is apparently beating benchmarks. So again, just the AI race, Zuckerberg's jumping in there as well. But the other one is they have built the largest model with the most parameters. So it's got 2 trillion parameters on it. So technically it is going to be the most knowledgeable model, and it is open source as well. So Llama is actually one of the ones that we don't use at BuildPass behind the scenes, but I'm super interested to get this integrated now and see what it's good for. Because we use lots of models behind the scenes for different things, super interested to get this one in. So look, no massive hot takes from me on this other than it's really exciting and it's just good to have another player in the race. We're all going to benefit from it.
Yeah, well, and speaking of agents, which has got to be a topic every week because it's just the space is evolving so quickly. One of the things that I took from the conference was, and I've seen a few things online, but really I think if you've got an organization chart or an accountability chart or a functions chart within your business, what we're going to start doing now is we're going to build that org chart out digitally and try and assign an agent to every job function, and just try and load in our proprietary data into that job function and then create the perfect person for that role. Now it's going to create the perfect agent. What I also want to do, I think then, is create a custom GPT for every person in the business. So there's a lot of personality testing things out there. We use one called Culture Index, which is a bit more in depth, but you can get some lighter sort of ones to basically figure out what type of person, what type of people you have in your organization, what makes them tick, what gives them energy, what takes away from them, what's their mastery, what do they do. And you can plug in a bunch of their data as long as they're happy for you to do it. But I think they should be, because what they're really doing is they're creating potentially an agent of themselves that people below them or above them can ask questions before they ask the person, just to say to not bug them if they're in some good deep work. So I think you're basically going to have a digital version of your organization and a physical version. And people are going to be able to, and then people themselves will be managing digital partners in agents throughout their organization. One of the terms that came up was an agent swarm, which sounded scary, but as a business owner sounded exciting. The idea of a swarm of agents working while I sleep sounded great. But I just think in general, it's so easy now to create custom GPTs on ChatGPT. If you get ChatGPT Teams, I think it's circa $30 a month per member. You can put your proprietary data in, it remembers things. You can set up levels of authority. So, certain people can see, have access to certain GPTs and access to certain data. They're obviously not training on your data when you're paying as well. So that was really exciting. And I think the biggest headline for me for the agents is I'm going to create an AI board, right? Now, in my AI board is going to be all my mentors who don't know they're my mentors. So for instance, on your board, you could have Steve Jobs, but you could limit his authority to product design and how to release cool features or what I should be focusing on. And you could cap that you don't want to get some relationship advice off him or how to treat people nicely, right? So you could sort of give it whatever context you want. You could do the same thing with Elon. You could say, look, I want to have Elon on my board, but some of the things that you don't like about him, ignore that. And then you might, if you've got to deal with investors all the time, you might want Warren Buffett or someone like that. But basically, you can create anything now where you want a board of advisors. And what I would consider a custom GPT now is just a filter. Like I've got a decision to make. What filter do I want to run it through? What's my decision matrix? And you can just start creating these things and then just run it by it and say, and what you're doing is you're giving that model context. And then you've got this, strategic partner in any different field.
It's a crazy concept.
It is, isn't it? It is. Like, and these people don't even need to be alive anymore. Just really interesting things that I've come across over agents, and I'll probably try and spend the next month or so actually putting these things into place.
Yeah, and it's like it's a crazy concept to be able to put that together. And one thing you can do with it is you can just ask it questions and you can have that one-to-one communication. You probably do this through something like a custom GPT. But what I would say is the next step is that's truly agentic. So when we're talking about agents and agentic AI, and we're thinking about this a lot. We're actually releasing our first agent product today. But when you think about agentic AI, the next step is, okay, if I've got this board, I don't want it to just sit there and I ask it questions. I want it to monitor everything that's happening in my business. It's going to read the Slack channels. It's going to read my updates. It's going to look at my customer announcements. And rather than you having to go and ask it questions, it could actually jump in. It could say, hey, Scott, are you sure you should be spending that money on that US trip? Because, here's the reason why. And that's where Warren Buffett comes in and he talks to you about how to save money. But it can actually do things on your behalf. Maybe it's actually scheduling in board meetings. Maybe you do actually still have a board meeting with your AI board and you go through that process because it's a good process to have. So it's a crazy concept to think about advisors who are not with us, or just you have any advisor in the world and you can tailor them, and then going that next step that it's like they're actually humans acting on your behalf and looking over what you're doing as well, which is it's a wild concept.
It is, and this is where now I think we get to talk to people within the organization who are maybe not feeling great about AI and say, well, let us set up something for you where you start to get the tools where you can, knock off work an hour early and pick up the kids because you've now got an agent conducting your activities overnight. And then you check in on it after dinner, check in on it before bed, check in on it, in the morning and just clear out. I noticed when we were trying to use Manus and Operator, we're sort of very clear on please stop pausing, just go through with the task. And then if you make a mistake, we'll let you know. because it just felt like it was getting to, you'd sort of try and leave it for half an hour, and 5 minutes after you've left it, it's saying, do you want to do this or this? And you're like, well, I've given you the prompt's detailed. If you get stuck, make a decision to move forward. And then we'll actually patch it up at the end. Now, if I'm building a product that I've got to release, that's maybe not how I'm going to be doing it. But if I'm just doing a presentation, or I'm asking it to put a list of certain things together for me, or create a spreadsheet, I think just the more autonomous these agents can get, and the less they just keep asking, because they seem like anxious agents at the moment, where they keep wanting like direction to see if they're going the right way. But you just go, and then like you're costing me like $1 a day. Just go produce while I go, spend some time with my kids. Anyway, I think the agent space, everyone's talking about it, but there seems to be, and there's actually some really cool businesses within your investors portfolio they're in the same space. So that was really cool. Look, mate, now I think it's time for my favorite part of the show, which is the robot rundown, where the rubber meets the road, and makes its way into the real world. And I think for me, this week, there's probably a bit more of a China focus on where things are heading, and our man Brett Adcock is even admitting it with his with some of his posts on Figaro. So, have you seen anything yourself? What's going on in robots?
Yeah, no, I saw his post about Figure and working with BMW on their production line, and we've talked about the humanoid robots before. I think the next step, similar to agents, you could say, is them working together autonomously. So combining the developments that we're seeing in AI with humanoid robots is the topic that's here to stay, and it's good to see Figure actually commercializing and not just raising a bunch of money and building these robots that look good on a video, but he's actually showing how they're working with BMW to drive real value. So I think that's really exciting. But look, big things coming out of China, like you said, with Unitary and their advancements there, with DJI. It does seem like China is well ahead when it comes to robotics, which makes sense because of their manufacturing prowess, and we've now seen their AI prowess. So I think they're going to be pretty unstoppable. And look, I hope that we do have some competition, because China having a monopoly over humanoid robot production does sound a little bit scary. But we don't want to live under a rock either, like I think the US has been doing for a while in not admitting how far that China has come. So look, on the specifics, I don't know if you wanted to dive into anything there, but I totally agree that China is certainly leading the way here.
Yeah, so the Unitary one was really cool because they're starting to get some really fine-tuned hand movements and pincer type movements, which is, I think, the generalist robot really needs high functioning hands, and our hands are very there's a lot of a lot of work and evolution that's gone into our hands and the way they work. So that seems like what they're focusing on, because Unitary have had broad-based humanoid looking robots moving around for years now, so they're really fine-tuning. They're in the fine-tuning stage, I think. DJI, similar thing with drones. They've been around for years, but now they're just they've actually made their way to Australia. There's a business in New South Wales that's cleaning, high facades with drones, with high pressure washers and things like that. The DJI drones, though, for mapping out different situations, for doing everything. I think both of those companies are operating out of Shenzhen as well. And I probably pronounced that terribly. Apologies. But I think in our space, the drone, you think about whenever you see a building wrapped in scaffold, especially like an old building, you might see it covered for like 6 to 12 months. And the cost of putting that scaffold up and making it safe and the effect on the street, so we're not far away from just a few drones going up and doing that activity, saving humans from heights, cleaning the sides of buildings. They're already doing it in China. The other, I suppose, younger viral sensation was the creator iShowSpeed. or some people just call speed. He's gone to China now. I don't know if they paid him to go there or not, but him being there, he has like 100 million followers or something in the US. So he was roaming around driving flying cars. There is some exciting stuff going on there, and I think you've always got to be careful of propaganda both ways from China and also US anti-China propaganda, and really have a look into it yourself. If you can even start training your algorithm at X or on Instagram or LinkedIn or wherever you get your news, because their power is almost free over there. That's the start of all innovation. Cheap energy is the start of innovation, I think. They're building, so many coal and nuclear plants. They've got raw power. They've got an enormous workforce, and they've been doing this for years. So they are really advanced. I'm going to head over there for the sake of this podcast and other parts of the business, but just also for you and I, just in case, just to figure out, I've got to figure out what the tax deduction is and where exactly to place it. But if we ever monetize this, but yeah, I'm going to head over there at some stage because, we're looking at within our W business in Australia, we're looking at, different fabrication and prefabrication and things because they're really talented over there. It's not, people think as China is cheap, but most of the good stuff you buy has been built over there as well. There's some real precision. They're really good at manufacturing. So we're taking a look at that just because some of the labor costs in Australia and just the sheer cost of things from here. So we're looking at that for the W business. I'm going over there for Elysium to look at the robotics. And another part of the show that we haven't done today, but one thing I'm not doing is flying Qantas over there because Qantas have made their way into the innovation bin. Now, the innovation bin we usually save for, new tools that haven't quite worked. So we park them. They're not gone forever, but we park them to say that, look, we tried it and it failed. Now, Qantas is obviously not going down as business. They're going really well. But my 16-hour flight to the US with no internet is completely unacceptable. No US airline would not give you internet. I told the people of San Fran, LA, that I hadn't had internet for 16 hours. They're like, did you come over on a dinosaur? Like, I have no idea. I don't even know if I could have taken a little mini Starlink with me and just put it in the front seat, or they would have banned it. Of course they would have. It's Australian. They would have banned it on takeoff or something. But I just can't believe. Can you believe that you can sit on a 16-hour flight and it's the only airline where you can't even purchase Wi-Fi and you're just sitting there, just not knowing if the world's blowing up behind you or, anyway.
Yeah, that's great. That is certainly worthy of being put in the bin with the relation to innovation. And look, I usually fly United to the US. You can jump on the Wi-Fi there. Even I was on a Virgin flight just back from Brisbane to Melbourne, and I built the website for this podcast on the plane on my phone using a tool called Lovable, which is really cool. I did a post about that. But absolutely, Qantas not having Wi-Fi on a 16-hour flight that's atrocious. So in the bin.
I love that you built the Built to Scale pod website on a plane.
Yeah, on the phone, and literally got most of it done in 10 minutes with a couple of prompts. It's even hooked up to a database. It's ready to go. So we've come a long way. Mate, before we wrap, just on the China thing, I think you're absolutely right that you need to be there. You need to go and see things in person, just like you did with the US and going to see the LA fires. Because the first time I went to China, it was 7 years ago now, and just seeing the scale of the infrastructure was wild. Between the airport of Shanghai and where I was staying, it was about a 45-minute drive, all over a highway that was 4 stories tall. The whole trip between them, there was buildings that were probably 10 stories tall. And this isn't like just, the middle of Shanghai. This is just between the airport and Shanghai. We then, on another trip to China, I went from Shanghai to Beijing on the train through country towns, and still the infrastructure and the buildings, 4-story buildings, 5-story buildings, either side of the train tracks the whole way. It's mind-blowing the scale of the infrastructure over there. They've built 1 million bridges over the last 20 years. I'm not just saying, that's an actual stat. They've built 1 million bridges. So to your point, China has developed very rapidly. They know how to do things at scale. They are probably the best in all sorts of manufacturing and infrastructure than anywhere else is on the world. And they're now exporting that as part of the One Belt, One Road strategy, whereby they go and make friends with, continents like Africa, and they're shipping their labor over there to build ports and things, essentially for free, just so that they can get those trade partners. So my point here is totally agreeing with you that to not write China off, you need to go over there to understand the scale. Even when I went 7 years ago, when food delivery in Australia was just starting, you could get literally anything delivered to you on a bike within 3 minutes from anywhere. It's just like that they've figured this out. I went to buy flowers from a little flower store in China, and I couldn't pay with cash. I had to use a QR code to pay via WeChat 7 years ago at a little store. So they're not messing around. They have the tech. They have done things at scale. And I would really recommend anyone who's written China off to go over there and see it for yourself, because the infrastructure, the technology that they've got is pretty crazy. So 100% get over there for build to scale, get to Shenzhen and see some of the amazing things that they're doing.
Well, mate, awesome. And just before I do let you go, though, there are some big BuildPass news going. And as a fanboy, number 4 user, just stepped in on behalf of you at a wine event in San Fran. Are you guys? Am I hearing right that you guys are releasing some stuff this week? You don't have to go into as much detail or as little or as much as you want, but a bit of breaking news on the show would be nice. So, what is happening over there? Speaking of, like, the way you've spoken about China, about how hard they're going and the velocity and how in front they are. What are you guys doing?
We're going hard as well. I think the biggest things that has changed in our business is we used to release things just as they came out. And what we have done is we've moved for the first time ever in 2025 to a quarterly major release lifecycle. So what that means is we have a date. We do an in-person event at our office. If you've seen people walking behind me, they're starting to get set up and prepare, because we're literally doing this today. And we've basically said that we're going to announce some major feature releases today, alongside some close customers and investors. We'll bring everyone into the office for lunch. So before I actually talk about what we're releasing, I just want to quickly talk about the impact this has driven on our business and why I recommend everyone to move to a more structured release lifecycle. What it has done is it has completely aligned every function of the business around this cadence. And where we got this from was a guy called David Sachs, who's currently running AI for the US at the moment. But he sold a company called Llama to Microsoft. It was the fastest company to scale to a unicorn exit. I think it was in something like 4 years. And what he said was he had this thing called the cadence, and I won't go into the detail of it, but one of the parts was aligning around a quarterly release lifecycle so that everyone was in sync. Because what it's done to our business is marketing now knows what has been launched. They've been preparing for months for this launch event and for all of the campaigns that are going to get dropped after. Sales, they've started talking to people on the phone about what we're going to be dropping and releasing things. And they're actually starting to make sales based on the fact that people know we're going to have these features. So we've just got complete alignment across the business. We haven't even run our first event yet. Here I am preaching it, but it just feels like we've moved a step in the right direction. So very quickly, what we're launching, 2 major releases. We've got a full-blown AI scheduling tool. So construction teams can do all of their scheduling within BuildPass. We've got a drawings management tool. So we use AI to look at all of the revision numbers inside of the drawing. So when you get a new pack of 40 drawings from the architect, you just get the folder, you drop it onto our AI. We work out what has changed, and we can send all the updates to the subbies. So they're the 2 things that people have been requesting. We're releasing a new app. It's got a new brand. I won't say what it is because it's about to come out today, but it's an AI native app that essentially allows you to just walk around any construction site, take photos of things, take videos, take voice notes. As it comes up, it's kind of like the Snapchat for construction, and you get back to the office and you say, generate me a report. You can say what you want. I want a defect report. I want to fill in my site diary, and it'll generate that for you. So you're not actually having to put it into certain parts of the platform. So that's another app we're releasing today. And then finally, we're talking about the future of construction work, very relevant to agents. So we're building our first agent product into BuildPass. It basically, instead of having to go and let's say using the writing a site diary, rather than finding the data from different parts of it, you just say, write me my site diary. And it will go off autonomously. It will look at your previous site diaries. It'll look at the weather for today. It'll look at who was on site. It'll look at any defects it'll raise. And it'll just write you a beautifully written site diary report. And you can chat with it to say, I want this updated. So that's what we're releasing today. Sure, plenty of the audience doesn't care about the actual details, but I do want to hammer home that for anyone, even if it's not, you're not in a tech business, aligning the business around some kind of life cycle and having deadlines and dates for things is just, it's been a massive unlock for us.
Oh, well, mate, we might end on that because that was awesome. Mate, great to catch up this morning. Thanks for giving me an extra 5 minutes to tune in from the Gold Coast, and we'll get stuck into it again next week.
No worries, Scotty. Enjoy the rest of your trip.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, bye.